Currently, a nickname is trending across social media platforms for Windows 11, MicroSLOP. But it is not a joke between tech enthusiasts, but a genuine expression of frustration from everyday users, IT professionals, and even developers. As we move into early 2026, Windows 11 has become the target of one of the most sustained backlashes in Microsoft's history. We're going to examine what went wrong, why millions are refusing to upgrade, and how Microsoft's own updates have made things progressively worse. When Microsoft announced Windows 11 on June 2021, the pitch was straightforward. This would be the most secure and advanced operating system Microsoft had ever created. The company emphasized hardware security features like TPM 2.0 chips and verified boot processes designed to protect against ransomware. The redesigned interface promised better performance and smoother multitasking. Updates would be smaller and less disruptive than the problematic Windows 10 experience. Microsoft claimed users would get more control over their data through clearer privacy settings. The October 2021 launch immediately implemented strict hardware requirements that locked out hundreds of millions of computers. Devices needed specific processors, TPM 2.0 chips, and other components that many functional computers lacked. Microsoft defended this as necessary for security, but critics noted it created an artificial upgrade cycle benefiting manufacturers. Compatibility blocks prevented devices from upgrading until conflicts were supposedly resolved, leaving millions stuck while others were pushed into an unready system. Then came the feature updates. The significant Windows 11 version 24H2 update released in October 2024 was marketed as bringing fresh AI capabilities and improved efficiency. Instead, it became the catalyst for a breakdown that exposed fundamental problems in how Microsoft develops and tests its software. On September 26, 2024, Microsoft deployed update KB504345, targeting Windows 11 versions 22H2 and 23H2. This was technically a preview update, meaning it was optional and intended for testing before becoming mandatory. Within 24 hours, user complaints flooded Microsoft forums, Reddit, and social media. Computers entered endless restart loops. Systems froze with blue screen errors. For devices with disk encryption enabled, users were suddenly asked for recovery keys they'd never been told to save, locking them out of their own data entirely. Security researchers quickly identified a serious problem. Microsoft confirmed in technical documentation that the update was causing network connection failures for applications running locally on the device. Development environments crashed, local web applications stopped working, database systems became unreachable. Microsoft issued an emergency fix, but warned it could take over 2 days to reach affected machines. For millions of people, that guidance was useless. Microsoft verified an even more widespread issue. Updates released after July 2024 for Windows 11 versions. 24H2 and 25H2 introduced a critical defect in XAML, the underlying framework that powers the Windows visual interface. The operating system was failing to properly register certain interface packages after updates were installed. The consequences were devastating. Start menus became unresponsive. Taskbars vanished. Settings applications refused to open. Some users logged in to see nothing but a blank screen with no desktop elements and no way to interact with the system. File Explorer crashed continuously, making it impossible to access documents or storage. Microsoft admitted that virtually all core Windows 11 features were compromised. Here's what many people assumed would protect them. If you didn't manually install these specific updates, you'd be safe. But that's not how Windows 11 works anymore. Many devices are configured to download and install updates automatically, regardless of user preference. Microsoft has pushed certain updates even on systems where automatic updating was supposedly disabled. And because the interface defect affected updates released after July 2024, anyone who kept their system current with security patches over recent months could be running a broken version of Windows without knowing it until a critical feature failed at the worst possible moment. Across the European Union, data protection authorities had already been scrutinizing how Windows collects diagnostic and usage data. Windows 11 was designed to provide clearer separation between mandatory and optional data collection, which was meant to satisfy GDPR principles. But when core system features fail and users get locked out of their own devices, privacy settings become irrelevant. You can't control data collection if you can't access the settings interface. Protection organizations across multiple countries raised concerns about the security crisis developing as hundreds of millions of users remained on Windows 10, either because they couldn't upgrade due to hardware restrictions or because they actively refused after witnessing the Windows 11 chaos. Windows 10 support officially ends in October 2025, leaving an estimated 400 to 600 million devices potentially exposed to unpatched vulnerabilities. Security professionals documented specific weaknesses in Windows 11, version 24H2. One vulnerability allowed attackers with basic local access to replace a system file and obtain complete control. This privilege escalation vulnerability is dangerous on business networks where one compromised machine becomes an entry point. Another issue involved an error reporting utility that could extract password information from system memory. Researchers demonstrated using an older file version on Windows 11 version 24H2 to extract authentication data. At these discoveries show Windows 11 isn't just unstable, it's creating new attack vectors. When the OS crashes repeatedly and exposes vulnerabilities, regulatory frameworks around data protection collapse. While Microsoft hasn't published names of specific individuals affected by these failures, the categories of risk are clear and well documented. Consider a small business owner running 6 Windows 11 computers, all configured for automatic overnight updates. They arrive one morning to find the Start menu unresponsive, the taskbar missing, and File Explorer crashing whenever they try to access business documents. They have invoices to send, payroll to process, and client deadlines. Instead, they spend the entire day attempting technical workarounds that require editing the Windows registry, something most ordinary users should never need to do. The cost isn't just time, it's lost revenue, missed deadlines, and damaged client relationships. For healthcare workers, the implications become more severe. Medical staff frequently use Windows-based electronic health record systems. If an update causes the Settings app to stop responding, or File Explorer to crash, they cannot access patient records, document treatments, or prescribe medications. If a privilege escalation vulnerability is exploited on a hospital network, attackers could access confidential patient information, violating healthcare privacy regulations and exposing the organization to massive fines and lawsuits. The same risk extends to legal professionals handling privileged communications, financial advisors managing account credentials, and educators storing student information. These aren't theoretical scenarios designed to create fear. They're realistic illustrations based on documented risks of what happens when the operating system powering billions of dollars of global productivity fails at scale. Throughout late 2024 and into 2025, users discovered Microsoft's priorities had fundamentally shifted. Windows 11 wasn't being built for users. It was being built for Microsoft's other products. The company pushed Copilot AI into every corner of the operating system. In December 2024, Microsoft announced Windows would become an agentic operating system, letting AI make decisions on your behalf. The announcement was met with immediate mockery. On Reddit's r/Windows 11 subreddit, complaint threads regularly garnered hundreds of comments. Users reported File Explorer freezing during basic operations. System resources were consumed by unwanted background processes. Windows Central asked readers what bothered them most about Windows 11. The responses were overwhelming. Privacy advocates pointed to aggressive telemetry that seemed impossible to fully disable. Even with all optional data collection turned off, Windows 11 continued sending diagnostic information to Microsoft servers. Productivity suffered as the OS constantly prompted users to try the Edge browser, use Bing search, enable OneDrive cloud storage, or subscribe to Microsoft 365. The Start menu included a recommended section that users couldn't remove, showing content Microsoft wanted to promote, rather than applications users actually needed. Tech journalists across multiple publications noted the pattern. One writer for a major tech outlet described Windows 11 as expensive, invasive, and ad-filled. Another compared Microsoft's approach to Windows ME, widely considered one of the company's worst releases. A Medium post titled The Windows 11 Crisis Explained captured the sentiment plainly: Microsoft is quietly wrecking Windows, and users are finally fighting back. The criticism reached Microsoft's leadership. Brandon LeBlanc, senior program manager of the Windows Insider program, took to social media attempting to reassure users. "I do hope we can work hard to improve Windows and bring you back," he wrote in response to complaints. He even acknowledged competition from Linux distributions, stating, "Fedora is my favorite Linux distro," but words weren't matching actions. In November 2025, when Microsoft's Windows president mentioned the agentic OS concept, the backlash was so intense that he had to disable replies on his post and issue a follow-up statement. Windows Central reported it as one of the biggest amounts of backlash I've seen around Windows this year. The core message from users was consistent. They didn't want an AI-driven operating system making decisions for them. They wanted a stable, reliable platform that simply worked. The MicroSLOP nickname started trending in late 2025 after Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella published an AI-focused blog post outlining his vision for 2026. Users weren't mocking the technology itself. They were expressing frustration at Microsoft's relentless push to integrate AI features nobody had requested while basic functionality remained broken. Windows Central noted that Microsoft had earned itself a new name on social media as protest to I continue to gain steam. The numbers told their own story. Despite Windows 11 being available since October 2021, adoption remains stubbornly low. As of early 2026, Windows 10 still held a larger market share, despite Microsoft's aggressive push to force upgrades. StatCounter data showed millions of users actively resisting the transition. An estimated 500 million machines couldn't upgrade due to hardware requirements. Another 500 million eligible devices deliberately avoided upgrading. Users who witnessed the ongoing problems chose to stay on Windows 10 and deal with the October 2025 end of support deadline, rather than risk the Windows 11 experience. On forums and social media, the phrase "I'm staying on Windows 10" became a common refrain. Tech news site. The Register published an article titled "Why Users Still Couldn't Care Less About Windows 11," documenting the widespread resistance. Users cited not just bugs and instability, but philosophical objections to Microsoft's direction. The operating system had become a vehicle for selling other Microsoft products, rather than a tool that respected user choice and productivity. Following months of criticism, Microsoft made changes. The company removed compatibility blocks preventing installation on devices with certain fingerprint sensors. Microsoft acknowledged the XAML interface defect and published workarounds involving manual process restarts or command line instructions. But these weren't simple fixes that average users could perform. Microsoft stated it was developing a permanent solution, but provided no timeline. As of early 2026, fundamental problems remained. The privilege escalation vulnerability could be exploited with minimal skill, and the exploit was published publicly. While Microsoft released corrections, the existence of such basic vulnerabilities raised serious questions about development practices. The error reporting utility weakness remained exploitable. Security software could detect some attempts, but detection isn't prevention. Even with every patch installed, Windows 11's architecture introduced attack vectors that didn't exist in Windows 10. Microsoft's response became predictable, reactive, not proactive. Issues emerged, users complained. Weeks later, Microsoft acknowledged the problem. Then, a partial fix arrived, introducing new problems. For users still running Windows 11, practical steps exist to minimize risk. Navigate to Settings, then Privacy and Security. Examine application permissions, disable camera, microphone, and location access for applications that don't require them. This reduces potential damage if exploits give attackers control. Consider pausing updates temporarily until stability improves, though this creates a trade-off between avoiding bugs and missing security patches. For interface defects where the Start menu becomes unresponsive, press Ctrl plus Shift plus Escape to open Task Manager, locate Windows Explorer, and click Restart. This may temporarily restore functionality without addressing the underlying cause. For users considering alternatives, options exist. Linux distributions like Ubuntu and Fedora have become increasingly user-friendly, with desktop environments that rival Windows in ease of use. macOS continues gaining market share, particularly among creative professionals and developers frustrated with Windows instability. According to multiple reports, significant numbers of developers have migrated from Windows to Mac over recent years. Apple is reportedly planning a budget MacBook that could further accelerate this trend. The next update that compromises your system could already be downloading at this very moment, and based on Microsoft's track record over the past year, assuming it will work flawlessly would be the biggest risk of all.